SpectreVision Radio.
Welcome to Caribbean Mystics Podcast,
where we marry mysticism, superstition, and lore. I'm your host, Paulina.
And I'm your host, Gabrielle, and we are your resident Caribbean Mystics.
Join us today as we explore the depths of real supernatural stories
told by real people located right in our very own backyard. Hey guys, welcome to another fabulous episode of the Caribbean Mystics Podcast. I'm your hostess, Gabrielle.
And it's Paulina. Hey.
Hey. And today the structure of our episode is going to be a little bit different. Paulina and I have been wanting to include new segments into the Caribbean Mystics fold. And so this is one of the segments that we've really been wanting to bring forward, which is the exploration of Caribbean myths and legends that we may not have stories and storytellers connected to, but that are very prominent parts of Caribbean culture and belief systems. And so in addition to our discussion today, we also captured a really interesting story from a lady named Rose that took place out on the open ocean. And we are going to actually put that at the very end of our discussion today. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, make sure to stick around, listen to her story. As Gabby said, it's going to be a little quick one, but super interesting. And today we're diving into, you hear my pun, into the watery depths of Caribbean lore. And Gabby has brought a very special and interesting Caribbean legend to us, to the forefront.
We are talking about one of the most prolific sea entities in the Caribbean region called the Lusca. It is not very well known across the region, but there are certain places like in the Bahamas and around Belize where the lore is like, you could, people know about it because it's more prevalent there. But if you've ever seen like Pirates of the Caribbean and they have the entity, the Kraken, this entity is very similar. This sea creature is very similar to the Kraken in nature. And so it originates in Caribbean mythology. The Lusca is revered as the region's most feared sea monster. It's predatory by nature, and it's known to remove sailors off of their ships and sink whole ships because it's said to be incredibly massive. Sometimes people believe that this creature, the Lusca, actually moves in packs or pods, similar to what like whales and dolphins, how they kind of like navigate the ocean. They're usually together in a group. But recently, the legend has experienced a resurgence because there's been some high profile documentaries that are being made and have been made, including a well known explorer called Jeremy Wade, who featured a whole episode about the Lusca and him trying to find this sea creature. Yeah.
Is Jeremy Wade, did he have the show Destination Unknown or something like that? What's it called? He's like a kind of Indiana Jones vibe on Discovery Channel.
Yes, his show is River Monsters, although
River Monsters. I know who you're talking about. I like that show too. So it's a freshwater sea monster? Is that what this is?
No. So this is going to be a saltwater sea monster. And the way that it's described through the lore is that it's almost like a chimera, and a chimera back in Greek mythology was essentially this like creature that had the body of a lion but the head of a goat. And the term chimera has just been used largely for any creature that is a mixture or an amalgamation of multiple animals.
I think it's pronounced chimera.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, yo. I was wondering, I was just like, why is this sounding so Mexican if it's Greek mythology?
Chimera.
Yeah, correct, chimera. Okay. Chimera. That makes perfect sense. Thank God for you, Paulina. Anyway, it's described as a chimera, and It is said that its upper half resembles that of a great white shark with a massive elongated jaw, very razor sharp, jagged teeth. It has a powerful dorsal fin and eyes that have evolved for the darkest of waters. And all along the Caribbean region has these very, very dark depths of water. So, like, even right off the coast of St. Croix, there's a place called the Wall, which is a world famous dive spot because it goes down hundreds of meters deep and no one's actually been able to go to the bottom. But story has it off the coast of St. Croix that there have been instances where divers have seen whales coming from that area of the wall, and the whales are missing massive chunks of flesh, not knowing what type of creature could create such damage on such a large animal.
Like
Yeah,
bite marks on these whales.
like huge
Mm,
chunks, like that don't
interesting.
look shark like. Um, just missing from the whales as they like come up from the watery depths, bleeding and in pain. And then there was even an instance where a world class diver was trying to do a world record where he went to as far down as he could go along the wall, this dive site, and he goes completely missing and never to be seen again. So,
Mm,
uh, with the story of the Lusca isn't something that we necessarily acknowledge here in the Virgin Islands, although we do acknowledge that there are parts of our oceans that are largely left unexplored. Even when you look to our north along the coast of Puerto Rico and the VI and the BVI and stuff, you'll notice that there's the whole like Atlantic Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench. That's the second deepest ocean or part of the ocean in the world.
mhm.
And they've never actually gone to the bottom of the Puerto Rico Trench. So, another indication that there's just so much about the ocean that we just don't have no idea about. So, anyway, so the upper half resembles that great white shark. You'll notice that this creature also has the body parts of some of our more notorious predators in the Caribbean Sea. And then the lower half is like a muscular octopus with tentacles, and they twist and they coil, and it's what propels the animal forward. The size of it is massive. It's 75 feet to 250 feet in length. This is why the stories of it, completely obliterating boats in the middle of the ocean checks out. It's capable
Mm.
of swimming at tremendous speeds, almost similar to that of a jet ski. So if you thought you was on a jet ski and you could outrun the Lusca, you lie. Like an octopus, it can traverse small patches of land or even in shallow water. So you're not completely safe because you are in the shallows from the Lusca. It possesses camouflage abilities as well, similar to that of the octopus. And so it can blend into its habitat around it. And that's what makes it even more of a conniving and successful predator.
So it's got a great white shark head,
Mm-hmm,
upper
mm-hmm,
body
mm-hmm,
with
mm-hmm,
huge razor teeth,
mm-hmm.
75 feet long, and tentacles, and it camouflages.
Yeah. So the
This
lore,
sounds like something from like Jurassic
a
Park,
sci-fi, yeah.
right? Like,
According to the lore, it's a very old creature, perhaps,
mm,
roaming the ocean during the days of the megalodon. Um, and
what
it
a
has,
crazy combo.
yeah, it has a really long lifespan. And so some people have perceived that the Lusca is a giant squid, right? That people have, just created this fantastical perception around, while other people believe that the Lusca is a vengeful spirit of a. Can you guess who the vengeful spirit is, Paulina?
Of
Guess
the
the
Lusca,
gender. Yeah, guess the gender of the.
it's definitely a female,
Okay, very good.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
We're
All
always
right.
a villain.
Always. Okay. The vengeful spirit of a drowned woman. So similar to the legend of the Gerona or the Banshee. Previously undiscovered deep sea creature. So some people believe that this could be a previously undiscovered deep sea creature. Like I was saying earlier, there's so many parts of our ocean depths that we've never been able to explore. Some people believe that this might be a mermaid type figure, um, like some sort of ancient nymph like being that's similar to the mermaid that we've come to know, while other people believe that this is a demonic shape-shifting spirit that feeds off of um the fair of souls. And in connection to that theory is the theory that this creature was formed by human sacrifices that were done along the cenotes of Mexico. um, so there are these blue holes that exist around the coastline of like the Gulf of Mexico, closer to like Mexico and Belize and stuff, right? Like Belize is a really famous blue hole. And then the Andros Islands in the Bahamas also has these very large blue holes, and they are a vibrant blue color. They look really crazy. And it's believed that that's where the Luscas, because there's more than one,
Mm.
that's where the Luscas live. In relation to that, these blue holes back in ancient times were seen as a pathway between earth and hell and the underworld. And not hell, let me take back hell, the underworld, where, you know, like souls travel between worlds and etc. etc. And so that connected with the theory that the Lusca feeds off of fair and off of souls is connected. And so it's believed that because so many human sacrifices were done around these blue holes, because they were seen as, again, this pathway between earth and
Wow, they were? I had no
the
idea about
underworld.
that.
Yeah, girl. So like in the Mayan civilization, it was really a common practice to do these human sacrifices and then drop the remains of the person into these blue holes, because it would be a direct pathway to the underworld. And so it's believed that these human sacrifices are connected to the birth of the Lusca. Now, I know the skeptic in you is swirling. And so I do want to indicate that there has been a really interesting thing that happened along the coast of St. Augustine in 1896. There was a unknown creature that washed up on shore, and it had been severely mutilated by, I guess, other predators in the ocean. But it was believed to be the body of a Lusca that had died, and its carcass was essentially rotting on the shoreline. And so they brought people to come and do some examinations and this, that, and the other. And one of the scientists acknowledged that it had the qualities of a super large octopus. Um, Although he could not double down because the creature had been mauled so much, but a lot of the physical structure of the animal seemed to be that. Years later, as scientists like to do, they come back again and they were like, oh no, it's just the blubber of a whale that, you know, was severed off in a shark attack. But that completely discounts the original description of what was found on the beach. You know, sometimes scientists like to have, you know, concrete reasons for why things happen, because the ambiguity of not knowing is just sometimes a lot for people. But yeah, so this creature that washed up on St. Augustine, the scientists have gone back to it several times over the last few decades, trying to explain away what happened and why that creature ended up where it ended up.
So I'm like looking up photos of everything that you've been talking about. And I see St. Augustine monster. Yeah, this is old because I'm looking at the pictures are all either illustrations or black and white. It does
Mm-hmm.
look like some sort of just weird blubbery mass. Like you can't make out at all what this thing is. And we're gonna put the pictures up too, so you'll see them.
And you
Interesting,
know,
interesting.
they say that art, you know, like mimics life. And even when you look at the story of like the Kraken and in Pirates of the Caribbean specifically, you know, like a lot of those behavioral traits of the Kraken is very similar to the Lusca, including the
Mhm.
fact that it was mostly like a nocturnal animal and it emerged by nighttime. It was notorious for dragging boats down of fishermen or even like old vessels, like the large merchant vessels that would be traversing the Caribbean Ocean. It's said to have phosphorescent eyes in some descriptions with like a murky color and grayish brown spots, similar to what we saw with the Kraken. And many people speculate that this creature kind of hangs out in lobster rich zones inside of the blue holes. So when you go inside of a blue hole, it's like a massive cavern, and lobsters tend to hide in the little crevices around the cavern. And that's apparently the delicacy that they really enjoy having.
See, now I'm gonna come in with some skepticism naturally because that's just how it is, okay? But this just makes me think of like the colossal squid, the
Mm-hmm.
colossal giant squids, which we know are here today, live in the very deep depths, and a lot of this correlates with that. I feel also like if I was from back in the day, before people knew what this was, and I saw a colossal squid, it would look like the upper torso of a great white. It's very fleshy, it's pointed, almost like the nose or a snout, and the long tentacles come in from the body. And these things get huge. The biggest one ever recorded was 59 feet and 4,000 pounds. And usually they end up washed up on shore after they
Mm-hmm.
attack. And there's known um, fights and I was going to say arguments, known brawls between whales and these giant squid because the whales come up and they have these enormous suckers scarred onto their bodies as well. So, like, I don't know. I may be calling out the Lusca. I feel like this is just a classic. That was not a Lusca. That's a giant squid. We got it mixed up, and the legend just kind of continues. But I'm curious, like, where do you know, like, the origins of this legend? Like, where it kind of began or started?
That's the thing, I'm not sure. I could only imagine that this is a very, very, very old lore because it's very similar to the Loch Ness monster. You know, like
Mm,
there are just these similarities that you just kind of can't explain away. And so I have to believe that it's something that probably it could be traced back to like indigenous belief systems. To your point, I don't mean to be a skeptic about your skeptic point, lol. But the
bring it
colossal,
on.
the colossal, I'm not saying, because I just had this whole diatribe about how we haven't explored the like depths of the ocean. Um,
Hmm.
but colossal squids are known to live in the Southern Ocean. In fact, there have been
Mm,
no sightings of the colossal squid in the Atlantic Ocean, or around the Caribbean area. The closest sighting that they've seen was a juvenile colossal squid that was along South America by the Sandwich Islands. So, like, closer to
mm.
Antarctica.
That's true. They do like cold waters.
Mm-hmm. And our water was hot.
The only thing I could think of is that it's some kind of other species of a colossal
Mm.
squid. I mean, the sound of a great white head, if you guys look at pictures of this thing, for you that are not watching YouTube, look up the pictures of this thing. It's terrifying. And it looks kind of ridiculous too. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of funny looking.
It does look ridiculous. I would say that it's probably closer to a colossal squid, if it is real, if we are pontificating, right? I would say that that whole part about a shark head is probably just something that was added in for the kids and possibly isn't what's real. But I do believe that because of how much of our ocean is simply unexplored, there is quite the possibility that we have massive creatures living closer to like the ocean floor. And so I believe that there are sea monsters, quote unquote, that we have in the region. I just don't think that they are a shark head, you know, tentacle legs kind of vibe.
See, like I feel like definitely, yeah, we know more about outer space than our oceans. So there I'm definitely open to the possibility of undiscovered species and animals. But living on the ocean floor, I'm not so sure, just because the sheer amounts of pressure, depths, temperature, it's nearly impossible for anything to survive down there.
Not
Just
necessarily.
physically. And it's all like microorganisms. By the time you get towards the bottom, it's like very small creatures that have to adapt to living in such frigid, cold, and dark places. Like they don't even have bones. Most of these creatures are just like jelly like. They communicate with light signals, as some of you have seen.
I think you've
Okay,
gone
but
a lot. I think you've
tell
gone
me
a
what
lot
you.
further than I thought. Like I
Oh,
was thinking that they're probably in like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the different
Twilight
zones
Zone
of the
era,
ocean.
midnight.
Yeah, like, let me look up the ocean zones.
So
I don't think that they are at the like complete, but like what is it, the Hadal zone? I'm not advocating for that. I'm advocating that they
a
are,
little bit
by the
higher.
bathypelagic or the mesopelagic, like you gone far, P, you gone far.
Got you.
But there
Sorry. You
are
said bottom of the
animals.
ocean. I was
No,
like,
no, no, no. I didn't know we were going all the way down there. No. I definitely think though that there are animals that have the capacity to like large scale animals that have the capacity to exist at very deep depths. Um and I also recognize that this is a really fantastical story, and we haven't gotten a story about this creature, guys. So this is why we had to use one of our like discussion episodes that we're gonna rename LOL to talk about it, because I find it to be so fascinating. But we're also not a part of a Caribbean culture that necessarily acknowledges sea monsters.
mhm. uh, surprise, surprise, if some of you don't already know. Yeah, that's true. But I think the only reason I know about these depths as well is because it leads me to season one, episode Mermaid in the Water. Um, it's what made me inclined to do research about the depths of what creatures could live where, and um, who we what we might not know is down there. So
Yeah.
this episode kind of goes in alignment with that episode. And if you're new to the show, go back to season one, listen to Mermaid in the Water. It's an amazing story about an eyewitness account of something strange. And if you didn't get it from the title, I'm sure you'll figure it out what it is that our friend saw in the water while he was fishing. But
Yeah.
same thing, we were talking about the depths and what could live down there. Um, but this was a great story that you brought. And I think what we're going to leave you guys with is a little bonus episode about somebody that had an experience on the water as well. We're going to spoil it a little bit just because we want to tell you some of like the theories and things that we found along the way of hearing this story. But in short, without giving away too much, this girl whose family runs a charter boat company, local as well, which is awesome because nowadays in the VI, it's a lot of people that aren't from the VI that are doing charter boat companies. So it's nice to hear like a native Virgin Islander and their family doing this. But to get to my point, they have this experience where the boat suddenly stops, and it's a large, very large vessel, sailboat, and it just stops dead in the water, like somebody halted on the brakes. But it got me thinking, like, what could do that? So I asked on Reddit under a sailor subreddit. It was called like mariners or sailors, some boat people, okay? People that know their shit. And I said, is something like this possible? What could it be? Is it supernatural, you think? And a lot of suggestions are what she mentions in the story, maybe it was like a fishing line, or a reef or this and that. But then there were some answers that were kind of interesting to me that people suggested. And they said, well, I have definitely ran into a whale before, something large underneath that stopped my boat completely and then kept it going, um, or a large creature. So I just wanted to leave it at that because I thought that was interesting.
That is super interesting. And I did research on my side for her story because I was like so confused. And one of the things that I saw that's more on the occult side, because I was like, oh, yeah, there have to be some scientific reason. But we're to be talking about the stone tape theory. And I don't think that we've acknowledged that the stone tape theory exists over the ocean as well. And so, one of the theories that I kind of landed on is maybe she was having a moment of residual memory over the ocean where a boat struck a reef, or where, like a boat
Mm.
was sank by cannon fire. And what she experienced was almost like a momentary lapse in the fabric of time, where multiple moments merged together and the ocean was replaying an event that happened over the ocean. And this is a phenomena that people that are like oceanfarers can acknowledge, because they will talk about hearing cannons as they're sailing, or hearing people screaming even though they're out in the open ocean by themselves. And so in some places around the ocean, some people call them haunted highways. So even along the coast, it's the tip of Africa where the Flying Dutchman is said to sail around. The Flying Dutchman is an apparition of a ship that is almost a residual memory of
Ooh, we should do an episode about that
a
because I
timeline.
have not dived into them.
Yeah, I've gotten into it's the whole thing around ghost ships is a very real phenomena that people that have existed on the oceans for, much of their lives can attest to.
Like, you think of like a glitch in the Matrix, like the back
Yeah,
rooms kind of experience.
exactly.
I see where you're going. I feel like in that case, like her surroundings would change too, right? Like the color of like the scenery or like the ocean or the sky would look
Not
in tandem.
necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's a matter of, so what would be interesting, and I'm not sure she has the correct if she has the exact coordinates of when that happened. It would be interesting to see if there's a shipwreck underneath where her ship stopped.
Mm. Well, she did mention that underwater burials and cemeteries, which also adds an extra factor, eerie factor to it. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't even know that, like, I feel like it's kind of popular, but not as known in the VI to do like underwater burials.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's like, it's a lot of Frenchies do it too. Not speaking
Yeah.
on behalf of all Frenchies, but I just know like a few
Yeah.
friends that have
It's
done
true.
underwater burials. So who knows? Maybe they were
Yeah.
stopping by to say hi, like she was saying.
Correct. Let us know what you guys think. This is going to be the first episode where we actually put the story at the end of the episode. So let us know what you guys think about the Lusca, and then send us your theories about what may have stopped Rose's boat in its tracks. Check us out next week, next Thursday, for our very next episode. And it's been a pleasure getting to explore the watery depths with Ala you today. Bye, guys.
Yes. Bye.
I am Rosemarie Maduro, a proud Virgin Islander. My mother is originally from Philadelphia, but of Native American descent. My father is from the British Virgin Islands, and they met almost 60 years ago on St. Thomas and made their life here. My very first beach encounter was on Koki Beach. Before there was all of those buildings, before there was Coral World, I was dipped in the water at 3 weeks old by my father. I always say that Koki is my beach because that was my first seawater bath. My dad had a fleet of sailboats, and so at a very young age, we were always on the ocean. He would take tourists and locals out on charters that would go to Buck Island, to Christmas Cove, sometimes Water Island. The 52-foot ketch, the Flyaway, it slept 8 comfortably. That became his main source where he would do long distance sails between the islands. We would go to those long weekend trips, whether it's to the British Virgin Islands, to St. Croix, or even to Vieques and Culebra, and get to experience something a little different each time we went to these different places. He taught us all to sail. It was just mandatory. You were going to learn to do this, whether it's under power, whether it's under sail. And At the age of 12, I put a couple of Swede sailors to shame because they couldn't get into the fuel dock. And I was able to dock his largest vessel, which was 52 feet. I brought her in without an issue. And they were like, "How old is she?" And he said she's 12. The summer of 79, my mother, my father, my sister, and myself were heading out to the British Virgin Islands, Tortola to be exact. We left late in the evening to cross through Sir Francis Drake's passage by myself, meaning I needed to learn how to navigate that passage without assistance. My anxiety was through the roof because one wrong position, one wrong turn, and you are going to hit reef. That was nerve-wracking, but I got through. We get into the British Virgin Islands water, into the moorings, which is a popular yacht club. So you get to meet a lot of people. We did have a cat on the boat. His name was Sammy. And Sammy didn't come off the boat, but made his rounds, let everybody see who he was. We stayed in Tortola for a couple days. Some of my cousins that were in my age range came down so that they could sleep on the boat with us. Right around then, the waves had started to get a little crazy. All night long, we just kept hearing clang. The cables and the sail cords hitting against the mast as the boat moved side to side. Some of the rocking got a little bit out of control. Hurricane David and Frederick were two hurricanes that came and passed through our territory. My father, I remember him saying that he wanted to get out of Tortola before David came too close. Once any of those storms are approaching our area, the waters get bad and sometimes dangerous. So his idea was we would head to St. Croix and it would take us away because that storm was supposed to go more north. He had decided that we would venture off south to St. Croix instead of going north. And that's where I feel the biggest mistake was. The seas got so rough, and at that point, he didn't want to turn back. He was like, no, we're going to power through it. It just got progressively worse. The boat was doing a wheelie for a car, straight up in the air and coming straight back down. My mother and my sister went below deck. I stayed up on top with my dad. We fought 15 to 20 feet waves, rough water, rain, wind for almost 8 hours. What would normally be a 2-hour trip, I could see the defeat in his face, and my father's a seasoned sailor. When we started to see land, which would be St. Croix, that was the glimmer of hope. He had decided, we're going to make it. We finally got into their harbor, Gallows Bay. Stayed at a friend's house on land, but it took my dad like 2 days to recover from that trip. His body was so banged up. He was so out of it and tired. It was just a rough trip. After he started to show signs of life again, we stayed in St. Croix maybe a day or two later, and whatever weather was passing had passed. There was sunny skies and the water looked really nice and calm. We had left around 10 or 11 in the morning from St. Croix, heading back to St. Thomas. And on that sail back, it was almost like almost like fairy tale, because the dolphins were swimming alongside the boat and jumping up and showing off. It was just so pretty, and the water was just going with us. All the sails were open, all the sails were full with wind. He didn't use any power, it was just sails, and everything was just going so beautifully. We're nearing Frenchman's Cap. It's a small rocky island. It's near St. Thomas before you get into our waters. All of a sudden, the boat stops. Stops like somebody had a handbrake and just pulled it up and put it in park. You can't really do that with a sailboat. Even if you took down the sails, the boat would still glide. No, this stopped. We immediately jumped up. Everybody was alert and looking around. My dad was like, maybe we caught a trap, a fish pot. He started walking around the circumference of the boat, still not seeing anything. It still didn't make sense to him because you would see the marker floating on the side of the hull if we did get caught on one. But it wouldn't make sense because a fish pot would not stop a boat of this size so easily. My mom was getting nervous. The kids are just confused. He's going around the boat, took the gaff off, which is this long stick with a hook on it, and started to glide it along the hull. If there was lines there or anything that he would pick that up. Nothing. I felt like we were there for at least 15 to 20 minutes trying to figure out why we're not moving. He looks around at us and he was like, well, that is Frenchman's Cap. My sister and I look at him like, what? What does that mean? And he was like, well, they buried the dead out here. When they do burials at sea, this is the island they do it by. We looked at him and I'm like, what? And my mom was like, don't start that. Don't bring paranormal activity into what's happening right now, because she's freaked out enough. Within seconds of him saying that, the sails filled back up. The water just started. It was just like somebody released the brake and the boat took off again. So fast that it kind of jerked everyone on it to be like, hold on. And it just took off. When we got back to the dock and we're offloading, people are like, hey, so how was the trip or whatever? And we start explaining what happened. People are like, what? That doesn't make any sense. That's weird. It was one of those things where you would tell people, no, you had to be there to experience what this was. People are like, oh, well, maybe it's just that you got caught in I guess what would be similar to a rip current for a boat. Like the current stopped the boat. And my dad was like, no, I've been on the sea way too long to tell you it couldn't have been something like that, because then the boat would have switched directions, or it would have probably gone backwards a little bit if it was current related, but it wasn't. It just stopped, like brakes stopped, full stop. Some people were like, yeah, I've seen things or experienced things that like that, but mostly between here and Puerto Rico. And they would talk about how a whole barge that would carry like the shipping containers would get spun around out of nowhere and then spin back and keep going where it's going. And it wasn't the captain that was doing it. I just know that experience, every time I go out on the sea and we have to go, even if we're going on the boat to St. Croix, like the ferry, I always look at Frenchman's Cap. I keep Frenchman's Cap in my line of sight until we pass it. Because I'm like, I don't know. For me, and I think this is because of the knowledge later in life, anything that was slave trade related, I always feel has some sort of significance with why strange things occur in between these passages. I mean, as a child, it was a monster. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, something held the bottom of the boat like this. But my mind is between a spirit holding us that day, whether it was to observe who we were, or it could have been a captain that my dad knew, or somebody that my dad knew, and they were stopping him to say hi, which is what my great aunt always said. The fact that they didn't do anything to us and it was just like a pause, she said, no, they were telling you hello. But, you know, when you hear people say things like that back in the day or when you're younger, you're like, what? You know, but it could have been. It could have been. She could have been exactly right. It could have been.
Thank you for listening to Caribbean Mystics Podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to share with your family and friends. Like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all of our spooky Caribbean content.
Do you have a story you'd like to share that took place in the Caribbean? Email us at caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. That's caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. Or check the show notes for more info.
Caribbean Mystics is created and hosted by Paulina Creaky and Gabrielle Carrard. Theme song is Folktale Juve Rhythm by Umi Marcano.